Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the Championship podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host Ollie Mann from the excellent Sheffield United Way and the Sportsman Untitled as well. How are you feeling, Ollie, after those three straight defeats for Sheffield United?
Yeah, well, you've got to take the rough with the smooth, haven't you? I've had a really good season. I've enjoyed the majority of it, and it's been a rubbish week. But I keep having to try and look at the bright side, and the bright side is we'd only end up being Southampton anyway. So you've got to focus on the positives. But yeah, it's a real kick in the teeth, really. It felt as though we'd really overcome some of those really difficult challenges. We'd gone to Hillsborough and won. We'd had Coventry at Bramall Lane and won with a fantastic performance. So you kind of. Yeah, it's the expectation that kills you, I suppose. That's what you've got to say, because it did feel as though we were ready to kick on and just didn't see the week coming. But it's the way it goes in football, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a world where on Monday, Burnley could rubber stamp promotion, depending on a series of results. Certainly if they beat Sheffield United. But I think in terms of Sheffield United realistically catching Burnley, you've basically got to beat Cardiff at home on Good Friday first of all, but then you've also really got to win at Turf Moor.
Oh, unquestionably, we've got to win 4 out of 4. Like, there's no more margin for error, no room for gaps or anything else now. United have got to win every single game that we've got left in front of us. I thought before the Plymouth game that 4 wins out of 5 might just about get us there, as long as we didn't lose at Turf Moor. Well, we've already dropped that, so now we've got to win 4 out of 4, and we've got to win at Turf Moor. It's not just don't lose. So yeah, I use the analogy on the Sportsman. I said we've got to play no miss snooker. Everything we do is going to be on point. It's going to be perfect. Even that might not be enough now, but to give ourselves the best chance, 4 wins out of 4, and there's no excuses. We've got to beat Burnley next week.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you sort of explain this sort of would you call it a blip from Sheffield United? Because it felt like you'd actually won some very tricky games in the run up to this, and then you lose at Oxford, you lose at Plymouth Argyle, the bottom team of the league, at home to Millwall as well. I mean, is it a psychological thing? How would you explain that sort of drop off?
Yeah, I think there seems to be 3 sort of trains of thought that are going on for everybody at the moment. I think, there's the perspective that is, I personally think that when Leeds drew against Swansea and we kicked off against Oxford 5 points, sort of a point ahead, but with the game in hand to go 4 points clear, I think the players got a bit complacent. I think they thought we'd done it. I think if you watch the game back against Oxford, there was an arrogance to United's performance that was very much we expect to win today. We've turned up, we've put 11 players on the pitch, we should beat Oxford. And the players played with that kind of attitude running through that game. And so, they lost that one. And I think that then set panic stations going. I think everybody who previously had just thought, well, we're promoted. We've got this in our hands now. All we've got to do is turn up, win the games that we normally win easily, and we'll be fine. Losing at Oxford kind of reminded United that we're not that team. We're not invincible. You've still got to turn up, be professional, do the job, win the games of football. And I think we panicked. And I think you really got a sense of that panic. The first half against Millwall, I think with Wilder not making any changes to the team, sort of saying, no, they're gonna go out and do it again. I think, in hindsight, it's a really bad mistake. And I think that, again, just built this panic feeling within the club and built the panic that seems to be going on in the sort of players and the manager's mind. And then before Plymouth, to be honest, I kind of had a feeling we'd lose at Plymouth. I won some money on it.
Really?
I did bet on it because if you saw Wilder's press conference beforehand, he sort of had this weird rant about pressure. And they said to him, are you feeling the pressure? You've got to go and win now. And he did this really bizarre, pressure? What do you mean pressure? The pressure's for the team trying to stay in the division. They're bottom of the league, so you know exactly what they're like. They're not that good, are they? And it was just...
Darren Farley's worrying for his job now, Ollie, as an impressionist.
I'm talented, what can I say? But yeah, so there was this really weird rant. And then within sort of 10 minutes, you'd kind of seen Jack Robinson arguing with anybody who'd stand anywhere near him. He was shouting at the ref fairly regularly. And it just felt like all of those leaders at the club had lost control of the situation and didn't quite know what they were doing to win it back around. And so resorted to a kind of anger, passion moment when what we needed was cool heads, calm heads. And that seems to have cost us. Obviously, there's the other thoughts. There's the one that is very much, we've been winning tight games all season. You've asked me about it every week since September. Sheffield United played rubbish this weekend, Ol.
It's my first question every week, Ollie.
First question every week. United played rubbish and won again. Do you reckon
you got away with it again, Ollie?
Yeah, once again, it was rubbish and you won 1-0. How do you feel? And so I'd kind of got accustomed to saying, well, we keep doing it. And, I think, that arrogance I talked about before, I think that seeped into me a little bit, because I was sat there going, yeah, I think we will play rubbish, but I still think we'll win 1-0 because we always win 1-0. We don't play rubbish and lose. That never happens. And actually, it does. The last week, we've played probably exactly the same performance level as we'd played for the 3 months beforehand. It's just that rather than the big moment going in our favour, it went against us. And so there's probably a little bit of an element of it was coming. But then the final one, and, I think this is fair as well, it's relentless. Like the pace and the consistency and the winning machines that Leeds and Burnley have become. Like, they're just relentless. They don't drop points. They don't make mistakes. They just win games of football week after week. 88 points after 42 games really is sort of a mental sort of pace that they've managed to keep. And so part of it is that, we've given everything we've got. I believe the players for United have given absolutely everything, but Leeds and Burnley have just burnt us out. We just don't have the intensity to keep up at that pace. We did it for 39 games. Unbelievably good, incredible performance for 39 games. We just didn't have it in us to maintain that pace for 46, which is what you need in this league. And it's what you need when you've got two teams who are as good as Leeds and Burnley are.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to talk. I quite liked actually that in his interview after the Plymouth Argyle game, Chris Wilder said something like, "I'm not an idiot in relation to something that goes on in the match," but then he sort of almost half jokingly referred to his behaviour. Sort of didn't quite say it, but you sort of could tell that he had a sort of a wry smile, and I quite liked the sort of the self-awareness that he showed there, that maybe hopefully for the business end of the season, but also for possibly the playoffs, he is going to have what it takes to sort of recenter himself a little bit.
Yeah, I really hope so, because those scenes at full time against Plymouth, they weren't what anybody wants to see really in terms of the way that we want to go on. This season United have been a team that have played on the edge. We've had that sort of bite, that intensity. I think we've had 6 fines, have we, from the FA for scrapping at full time and for bookings and for all kinds of things. And so we've been right on the edge, but it did feel as though that took a little bit of a shift in the wrong direction. I don't mind us sort of standing up for ourselves. I don't mind us sort of really going big for it. But, they're just celebrating in front of their own fans. And I think going over, starting an argument, starting what turned into a bit of a scrap in the tunnel, I think you really don't want to see that. And you especially don't want to see your manager being involved in that kind of thing. Yeah. So hopefully he does recenter himself. Hopefully he takes a moment to reflect on everything that happened on Saturday. And he's got to do a lot now, because getting this club, not just the squad, but the whole club, getting the club of Sheffield United ready for the playoffs, there's a lot of historic trauma to overcome there. So there's a big job on to make sure that everybody's ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we've covered the psychological angle. Is it just complacency? Are there any other sort of factors that you would pinpoint? Is it partly the physical aspect in terms of?
I think they're knackered. If I'm being honest, you look at the squad and you look at some of the players who are playing in there. I've told you since the 26th of December when Harry Souttar did his ACL against Burnley. And El Ahmedodzic and Jack Robinson are not good enough as a centre-back partnership to get promoted out of the Championship. I've said it every week to anybody who would listen. I've quoted stats, looked at numbers, looked at goals conceded. The one that stood out to me the other day was before Harry Souttar's injury, United had got 15 clean sheets in, I think, about 23 games. In the 20 games that have followed, we've got 5.
And that even with Michael Cooper in the net.
Even with Michael Cooper in there, even with everything else we've got, we just don't keep clean sheets anymore. We're not able to stop the opposition scoring against us. And so there's something in, that lack of quality at centre-half eventually has come back to bite us, especially when you look at the goals that we're conceding. If we go just over the 3 games, a long throw against Oxford. Now, I'm not saying that he never makes mistakes and that nothing goes wrong and the sun shines out of his backside, but you don't concede from long throws and corners when 6'7" Harry Souttar goes and just blasts it as far away as he can. You know what I mean? He just deals with that situation. We didn't. We got punished. You then come to Millwall and Jack Robinson's caught out of position, gets drifted past so easily by Josh Coburn, who just finds it so straightforward to be able to take him out of the game, and you concede a goal. You then concede off a set piece, a corner against Plymouth, and then we get caught on the break in the last minute. That happens, it's not great. It's pretty poor relay, but that happens. I can forgive that. The others just felt like they were mistakes that we didn't need to make. So I've talked for a long time about what I think is the issues in the squad in terms of quality, but also now we're looking at the legs, and Vinny Souza's not been fit since probably early December. He got injured when we played Sunderland at Bramall Lane. We beat them 1-0. He's not been 100% fully fit since that day. And so we've really missed him. He's a massive presence in the centre of midfield. So losing him is probably now just really caught up to us. Hamza Chowdhury's a great player, but he's not that player. He doesn't do it in that way. It's notable that the 2 goals against Plymouth came after Souza had gone off injured again. So that starts to catch up to us. But then, our key men up front, Tyrese Campbell is a lovely footballer, but he's not got 46 games at that intensity in him. And I think we've seen against Millwall and Plymouth in particular, he didn't start against Plymouth. He only came off the bench for the last 10 minutes, but I think he looks like a player who has probably put too many miles in his legs over the last few weeks.
Isn't that ironic though, Ollie? You've got, is it 4 or 5 strikers in the offing? and yet you're relying on Tyrese Campbell.
Yeah, but the other talking about the squad issues, and we're relying on Tyrese Campbell. You have to look in hindsight at January. £12 million on Tom Cannon. Right now, if you told me, is that worth it? He's got a lot of work to do to prove himself still, because he doesn't look anything like the player that we thought we were signing. We didn't bring in a centre half. Kiefer Moore apparently is not fancied. Wilder don't want to put him in.
Just on, no, that's all right. You're coughing and spluttering a bit like Sheffield United at the moment.
I know. That cut me deep.
Oh, sorry. But what was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, because this is the thing. What I worry sometimes is when clubs sign a centre forward because they're very attracted by their goal record and they think they can fire them over the line, but then they don't always have an idea of how this player is going to fit into their strategy or what they want to try and do aside from scoring goals. I mean, are you seeing anything from Tom Cannon aside from outside the sort of goal scoring areas?
No. And it's not his fault. I'm not putting this blame on Tom Cannon's door. I want to be really clear. You don't write somebody off after 3 months when they've come into a difficult situation in January, when there's other players in form, and you've really got to try and find your way. He's got a long time and a long-term contract at Bramall Lane, where I'm sure he will prove himself over the years as he starts to sort of build himself into being United's starting number 9. But so far, no, he's not really offered anything. And I think that's what's really difficult to try and sort of judge if you're a United fan at the moment, because I find myself asking the question of what's he good at? And I don't know the answer. I've seen him play I don't know how many games now, but I can't answer the question of what he's good at. He's not big and strong, so he doesn't hold the ball up, win his headers, win his physical battles. He's not fast. I've seen him running through on goal, one-on-one with a keeper, and have 2 defenders come back and tackle him because he's not fast. In terms of his shooting, I've not really seen him have a shot, never mind have a good one. So it's hard to judge that because he's not getting into those positions. What I'm told I've got friends who are scouts in the game. I've got friends who obviously watch a lot of football and really like it. They tell me that it's his movement that's elite, that generally speaking, he's somebody who's going to make the right run, get into the right position, find himself in the right places to score goals. So even when it's not coming off for him, or even when there's issues, you'll always see that movement. But we've not found that yet at Bramall Lane. I don't think I've seen him get in behind a defender. I've not seen him sort of get on the end of a cross or a pass or anything really to suggest that he's going to be that player. So it's been a really, really disappointing sort of second half of the season from him, all caveated by the fact that we're not set up to play his style of football. We're set up for someone fast on the counter like Tyrese Campbell. We're set up for someone big to hold the ball up and knock it down like Kiefer Moore. Cannon can't do either of those. And so I'm not quite sure what his role is in this Sheffield United team, unless we transition to playing 2 up front and maybe we try something a little bit different.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if Wilder does roll the dice at this stage of the season, go for a different formation and go back to 3-5-2.
Overlapping centre halves. It's the only way. I mean, unfortunately, it's quite difficult to play overlapping centre halves when you've only actually got 3 centre halves at the club. It does make things a little bit difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the other thing is the one glimmer of hope you might have had would be that Leeds would stick with Ilyan Meslier, but Daniel Farke did drop Meslier, and the result's been 4 points from their last 2 games. They got a draw at Preston, draw at Luton, and beat Preston off end 2-1.
And beat Borough.
And beat Borough, of course, as well. And also Burnley have continued their own impeccable form. So again, it looks like it's one thing. Even Sheffield United getting maximum points, you're still going to need Burnley to drop another 2 or 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the Burnley or Leeds, one of the 2 teams, has to lose 2 of their last 4 games. I don't really see it happening. That's the problem. It's because of how bad our goal difference is in comparison. You know, unless we're going to turn up and looking at it, we need to beat. If we can beat Burnley 10-0, I think we'll have a chance of getting above them on goal difference. But that's the kind of goal swing that we're talking about that United are going to need. So, yeah, you're asking for 2 teams. You know, Burnley have lost, twice all season? They've got to lose 2 of the next 4 games. Leeds have lost 4 all season, even in their bad run. You know, when I was enjoying it, I'm not going to pretend I wasn't, and I was talking about Leeds falling apart and where they're going. They were only ever drawing games of football. They were always making sure that even when they weren't on it, even when they were having a bit of a wobble, they only drew games. If they're only going to draw, they've got to draw 3. You know, we're talking about 2 teams needing to drop 6 points. It seems really unlikely now. So I have to admit, I've written off our chances, if I'm being honest, of catching the top 2. I just don't see realistically that they'll drop the amount of points. There is a chance that United could win 4 out of 4. I don't think it's a high chance, but there is a chance that could happen. I don't think there's any chance that they will lose 2 out of 4, which is what we ultimately need them to do.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult one. I mean, in terms of the playoffs, what I love about the Championship, by the way, Ollie, from a neutral point of view, is that all 3 facets of the table are completely up for grabs going into the last 4 games, which is lovely. Oh, absolutely. So what I'm really excited about is the playoff scramble, because we can probably write off Blackburn Rovers. So we're looking at Bristol City, Coventry City, West Brom, Middlesbrough and Millwall. But Millwall are very much the form side, because they were nowhere near it in January, and then they've come on a brilliant run under Alex Neil.
Yeah, 1-4 of the last 5 games, obviously beat us at Bramall Lane. Seemed like a team who've really started to get it together now, you know. A really impressive victory, I thought, against Middlesbrough. You know, you can talk about coming to Bramall Lane, getting 3 points. That's a fantastic result. I thought on the night as well, they were outstanding. Josh Coburn just looked a complete different animal to sort of what I've seen from him before as well. I thought he looked dominant. He looked like he could pin a defender. He looked dangerous and like a real handful. So, yeah, I think they've got a lot on here because, you know, they've got it. The other teams around them have got the more difficult fixtures. They've got their difficult games out of the way. They've won them. They've dragged Middlesbrough back in so that they're now level on points. The only thing that could cost them, similar to what I was saying about United, is that goal difference. You know, they're 0. You know, they've got a level goal difference. They really need to try and get some goals into the squad, try and get themselves boosted on that front, because it's going to come down to really, really tight margins. They're 3 points behind Coventry, but they're 5 goals behind Coventry. That's where I think they're going to have to catch up. But I like Millwall for it, and I very much don't want to play them. So if they're the team that comes 6th, I do not want to play them.
Yeah, I think their form definitely makes them a really attractive proposition. I think Mihailo Advanovic has given them a real chance with his goal-scoring form. Arguably one of the best strikers in the Championship in the second half of the season. I think probably the criticism will be that Millwall maybe haven't created as much for him. And the fact that you mentioned Josh Coburn, and he was brilliant at Bramall Lane. But in terms of other players who are producing the big numbers, nobody else has scored more than 5 goals. Ivanovic, even all his goals have come under Alex Neil, so that's a real sort of hot streak for him. But I think, there's possibly not enough goals in the Millwall team elsewhere, and you could also maybe level a question mark around creativity, especially since Romain SA left for Crystal Palace.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they are the areas that they've got to work on. But, you know, we're talking about a playoff race here, and I mean this with no disrespect to any of the clubs, because if I'm being honest, I expect them to beat us now because that's just the way football goes. But you're talking about, it's a fairly low bar for the Championship playoffs. I think I could very easily pick holes in all of the teams that are currently on the race for it. I don't think anybody's anywhere near the sort of finished article that you'd be wanting to see, particularly if you're trying to get into the Premier League, never mind just for trying to get 5th and 6th to get into the playoffs. But I think Millwall, with their form, really do seem like a team that's going to be difficult to stop right now. They seem like a team who's really found that momentum that's pushing them forwards. And I think as well, you know, even without that creativity and without the extra goals in the squad, they seem like a team that's just solid at the back. You know, I saw United try and break them down for 90 minutes. I then saw Middlesbrough try and do the same. And nobody, you know what I mean? It wasn't like they were hanging on for dear life, reliant on the goalkeeper, reliant on luck. They're a team that are quite good at just stopping teams from being able to create against them whilst continuing to give themselves one big chance. I don't think they create a lot in every game, but I do think they can usually be relied on to create themselves one really good chance, which they're going to take. And at the moment, they are taking it, especially if it falls to Ivanovic. So, yeah, there is definitely question marks. I think it's going forward in their creativity that you start to just wonder about. But with only 4 games to go, momentum's going to do a lot of the heavy work for them. And if they can win their next 3, obviously it's Turf Moor on the final game of the season where, you know, depending on where Burnley are at, it seems unlikely you're going to get 3 points there. But get the next 3, get 9 points on the board, and you're in a fantastic position if you can take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, Alex Neil's done a great job, and I'm actually getting quite excited about Millwall and the general direction of travel for them. But again, I mean, you look at it, certainly from the point of perspective of Bristol City and Coventry, there's 3 teams on 60 points just outside the playoffs: West Bromwich Albion, Middlesbrough and Millwall. Let's say one of those teams, the most points any one of those teams is going to get is 8 points from their last 4 games. That means that you only have to get 68 points or 69 points to get into the top 6 of the Championship if you're in Bristol City or Coventry's shoes. So that shows just how it is a very low bar. Normally, I mean, I'm trying to think back to when Leeds United under Gary Monk in the 16-17 season. I think they missed out with, was it not far off 80 points?
Yeah, they got a lot, didn't they, that year? I'm just trying to think how many specifically, but
it was something around that. So it shows it's such a low bar, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, sounds bizarre to say it really when you start to think they got 75 that season, Leeds.
Thank you.
Confirm where we were at, but it seems bizarre, you know. It's the rule of the playoffs, I suppose, but it does feel a little bit interesting, I suppose, looking at it from the other perspective. Obviously, speaking as a United fan, there's a chance we're going to get 90, 91, 92 points. And yet, to get promoted, we're going to have to beat somebody who's got 68, 69. You know, 22 points we might be above them by the time we play each other in that 3rd versus 6th playoff. And it does feel a little bit harsh, I suppose, when you look at it from that lens. But I think that's made it more exciting. I think it being a low bar has made it a much more exciting race. And I think as well, it's given us scenes that you wouldn't normally expect. You know, Ashton Gate, when they beat West Brom, that last-minute winner, the place went insane. And it was beautiful to watch. You know, it was really nice to see. You could see the emotion, the joy, the celebration on every single fan's face because they never expected this. They didn't think they'd be in with a chance of getting themselves into this position. So actually, the lower bar has maybe meant that some teams who maybe don't always get the limelight are having some fantastic moments, really enjoying themselves this season. I think the team who's going to sit there kicking themselves and really starting to think like, how have we thrown this away is Middlesbrough. I think they've got to look back on this season as a massive failure because they're the team who really have no excuse for not being one of those top 6, really should have been the team that were pushing the top 3, top 2, really had high expectations and hopes for the season. They've really thrown it away, you know, in the last, probably since December. And that's really disappointing to see. But I'm really pleased for Bristol City and Coventry. I think you're right. I think 69 is the line. So I think Bristol City and Coventry need 2 wins out of their last 4 games. Given the form that Bristol City in particular are in at the moment, you've got to back them to do it. I think Coventry, they've got some big games on the horizon, haven't they?
Yeah, certainly have. From Coventry's point of view, their final 4 is West Bromwich Albion at home on Good Friday. Plymouth Argyle away. Argyle can still be in the mix to stay up on Easter Monday. Luton Town away on the penultimate weekend of the season, and Middlesbrough at home. So all 4 of Coventry City's opponents are fighting for something serious. So that's going to be an absolutely enthralling. I mean, maybe Middlesbrough on the final day could be out of it. So we'll
you're
see.
judging though on, you know, you want to play the teams on the beach, really, don't you? You get the opportunity. You know, I'm looking at United's games and I'm thinking, why did we have to play against Millwall, who had a chance? Why did we have to play against Plymouth, who were fighting for their lives? Let's play Swansea and Norwich, and give me some of these teams slap bang in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, you mentioned Middlesbrough, the sort of missed opportunity. And by the way, I remember, was it January? You said something about Middlesbrough that kind of went viral. Someone picked it up on social media, and I think it was a very interesting point. And even at that time, you were thinking Middlesbrough would get into the top six because of the quality and some of the players that we've spoken about. But I also think it's a missed opportunity for West Brom because I don't think we would have expected, Ollie, for us to be sitting here in mid-April and for Bristol City to go into the last four games with the initiative rather than West Bromwich Albion, who over the course of the season, I think they felt like the better team, haven't they? And I'm trying not to apply too much of a big club bias to it, but like Bristol City have been the outsiders who are either 10th or 9th all season, and West Bromwich Albion have dished out these thrashings. You've looked at Mickey Johnston, who's been amazing for some games. You've looked at Josh Madger, and West Brom, even under Tony Mowbray, they've delivered some really big, great performances. And they'll probably think, yeah, we should be in that top six as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, just 5 games ago, they would have been, 5-6 points ahead of Bristol City, I think, at the time. They got a really nice gap. Feels like West Brom have been 5th all season. Like, all season long, you've been sat here saying, well, West Brom are 5th, they'll probably get that spot. West Brom are 5th, they'll probably get that spot. But it's been a really, really bad March, wasn't it? They got 3 defeats in a row, including losing to Bristol City, which is probably the real sickener, because that's the difference in where they are right now.
Yeah.
Even just getting a point out of that game, they're currently joint on points, and you'd say it's in their hands to just kick on for the final 4. So, yeah, it's an opportunity missed. And I wonder if, Mowbray might look back on some of the decisions he's made since coming in, changing their style to be a bit more exciting to watch. Has that cost them the odd point here and there? Is there games where actually, if he'd taken some of Corberan's pragmatism, if he'd said, you know what, a point's fine here, let's not worry too much about the entertainers, let's actually try and just make sure we're getting points consistently on the board, maybe that would put them in a slightly better position going into this final run-in. But yeah, it's a shame for them, because I did think all season they were the team that probably deserved it, but you've got to prove it. It's probably, they'll be sitting there thinking the same as United are thinking right now. When the pressure really came on, when it came to that sort of crunch moment where you've got to do it, they crumbled at the moment that they needed it least. They really had to be able to just keep that momentum. So yeah, Bristol City are the surprise of the season for me. I saw the sort of Championship managerial manager of the year shortlist. I couldn't believe that Liam Manning wasn't on it. When you think about the success that he's bringing to the club there, what an 18 months he's had, I don't think anybody's bingo card had Bristol City getting top 6. And so that's a massive achievement. I think it's massively underrated for how well he's done this season, getting them into that position. But yeah, West Brom, Middlesbrough, both of them will probably be feeling a little bit sick that it's not going to be those that take that final spot.
Yeah, well, they've still got everything to play for, because even, we're ahead of an Easter weekend and it can all change again. That's everything, the crazy thing. Let's take that song. I think I think the Easter weekend, could completely turn the playoff scramble on its head. So that's kind of what West Brom, Middlesbrough, and Millwall are going to be hanging on to. Are you a little bit worried about Coventry with regards to the recent sort of plateauing in form?
I am. And I wonder if, there was this real run where they were getting so many consistent wins. But when you actually dig into that a little bit more, and I think actually Simon said it to us when he came on the show, when he was talking about Coventry's chances, I think he said we had a relatively friendly run of fixtures sort of just after January, sort of as they came towards the end of the season. They'd been on a fantastic run, but they were beating Stoke. They were conceding goals, but they were edging the game against Stoke, edging the game against Oxford, beating teams like Preston. They got really lucky at Hillsborough, for example, in terms of sort of being able to pull away. So maybe this is a little bit of that kind of performance level as started to match the results a little bit more. They might be thinking that, has the chance gone? Has that momentum that was behind them? Because at one point, just before the international break, I was looking at Coventry as a team that nobody would want to play in the playoffs. I was terrified of them. I thought, if we finish 3rd, I just do not want them to be 6th, because they're a team that can hurt anybody. They're amongst the best teams in this division, but they've picked up a couple of injuries. Obviously, some key players have missed out. I think Thomas has been out, hasn't he? And I think they've seen today that Emac has been sort of taken out now for the rest of the season. So there's some real gaps starting to appear in the squad. They've probably got the hardest fixture list that you're looking at on paper. And so, yeah, they're maybe feeling a little bit more nervous because I thought they were locked in. And yeah, I don't think anybody's locked in. I think that's the excitement of the playoff race, isn't it? You know, I've just written off Middlesbrough and West Brom. And now I'm almost talking myself into writing off Coventry. It's a really, really exciting race to be a part of, to be able to watch as a neutral, to see who are we going to be playing, who's going to be the teams that take it. Are they going to be in form or are they going to be wobbling a little bit? But yeah, I'm worried for Coventry because I think not winning at Hull, especially the way they conceded that last goal, especially now that Dovin obviously is missing the last few games of the season, big question marks and big questions to answer with big games on the horizon.
Yeah, absolutely. Who as a Sheffield United fan, would you consider the most favourable opponent? I know that's such a hospital pass, but
that is a hospital pass. The most favourable opponent. I'm going to think back. So the team that we've beaten most easily of those teams that are around the playoffs is Coventry.
Right.
Obviously, we just dominated them at Bramall Lane. We sort of kept them at arm's length. It was our best performance of the season. Middlesbrough, we again similarly dominated at Bramall Lane, found that a relatively easy game, but they're one of the few teams that have beaten us. They beat us at the Riverside back at the start of the season. I think I'd probably, if I was choosing today, I would want to play Bristol City.
Okay, interesting.
For two reasons. One, that I think all those teams that we're talking about have a really high ceiling and quite a low floor.
Yeah.
I think Bristol City are probably the ones who are most consistent. So they've probably got the lowest ceiling and the highest floor. And so are just consistently able to get forward. But that means that their highest level of performance, I think United can beat. I'm not saying we would. I'm not saying we necessarily would deserve to, you know. Quite often when we play Bristol City, they're the better team and we win 1-0. That's happened quite a few in the last few seasons. So I wouldn't be shocked if they came and beat us and they did us over two legs, because there's every chance that any of those teams could. But I think the team with the lowest ceiling is Bristol City. And so they're probably the team I'd most want to play.
Interesting, yeah. I kind of agree with that, because I think that you look at the sides like West Brom and Middlesbrough, who have been up there all season and have probably got a bit more star quality, a bit more ability to turn it on a big on the bright lights.
On it, they're one of the best teams in the league. That's what scares me. It's the same for Coventry. You know, I look at Coventry and Middlesbrough, and when they're on it at their absolute top level, they're as good as just about anybody in the league. Maybe not Leeds, because obviously they've just got this insane level. And so you don't want to play them on the chance that they turn up and have one of those nights, because that beats you. However you play, whatever you're doing, they'll beat you at their top level. So I'd rule out Coventry and Middlesbrough as opponents I would want to play against. West Brom, we've had two battles with them this season. Absolute battles. But I think their physical level, I think the way that they approach the game, I think the danger that they've got coming down the wings and the big man up front with Maja, we know that he's going to be able to score goals and he could hit form. And again, they can hurt you, they can punish you. Their style is not something United do well against. So I wouldn't really want to play West Brom. I'd say the same for Millwall. I think how hostile it would be at the Den on that first leg night would be horrendous. And they could easily start to just run through you with all of that kind of pressure that piles on top of the club. And similarly, they're a style that we can't defend against. We can't really play against them. We were lucky to only lose 1-0 at Bramall Lane, if we're being honest. You know,
so it's Jake Cooper in the box from the long throws, isn't it? And it's that kind of...
It terrifies me. I don't want to play Jake Cooper again. Just don't want to play him. And so, unfortunately, it leaves Bristol City, who I think have got the style of football that we would most enjoy playing against, because I think it's a style that we can counter. And like I say, I think they've got the highest floor. So I think they're not going to throw in a shocker where they just get battered at Bramall Lane. That ain't going to happen. Where it could happen to all the others, it wouldn't happen for them. But I also don't think they've got one where they could turn it on and we'd not stand a chance. I think whatever happens against Bristol City, we'd have a really good chance of getting through. Whereas against some of the others, I'm not sure that's the case.
Absolutely. Well, let's turn our attentions to the relegation battle in the Championship. I can't decide, Ollie, whether there's 4 teams in the relegation battle or about 9. But I think
it's a shame the season ends when it does, because honestly, if you had if you said that rather than it being a 46-game season, it was a 50-game season, I reckon anybody from Norwich down could go down. Just with an extra couple of games. You know, you look at the form that some of these teams are in. Like, you know, I'll talk about it from a selfish perspective. I look at Wednesday at the minute and they're in free fall. Like, they are just absolutely honking at the minute. Like, their performance level, the way that they're turning up for games, their record at Hillsborough, they're just in absolute free fall.
They've not won at Hillsborough at 3 o'clock on a Saturday this season.
They're a funny team. I'm enjoying it. You've got to have some joy, Gav, when your entire season falls apart. And that's the only joy that I've got left. But no, I think as it stands, obviously a 46-game season, I'm drawing the line at Stoke. I think there's 7 teams that are in this relegation battle.
Yeah. I mean, because let's say Good Friday goes a certain way. Because Oxford United, don't forget, are playing Leeds. Now, I'm not writing off Oxford United again in that game because I think they can. Because I think they can pull off some surprise results. However, if they do lose to Leeds and then some of the teams below them win, I think that does pull them back into it a little bit. They're obviously going to Cardiff on Easter Monday. Are they going, Cardiff absolutely have to win that game? Are they going to change manager? Are they going to bring in Neil Warnock to sort of galvanise everyone for the last 4 games? You don't know.
Go on, Neil. I wonder if Sharon will let him.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. So I mean, I think Luton, that defeat to Blackburn does feel significant to me.
It does. It makes it, because that's the big thing is for me, I look at probably, as much as I think there is this fantastic race of 7 teams, I think it's a lot for Plymouth and Luton to do, because it's not just that you've got to win one game. Winning one game, you're still in the relegation zone. They're 2 games away from being safe. And when you've only got 4 left, you need 50% of them to go perfectly in your favour and the other 2 to be at the same level. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They can't have one bad week, because one bad week means that they're done. So they've got to have everything go right for 4 games. So as exciting as it is, I probably am willing to say I think Luton and Plymouth will go down. I think the next one is really exciting, though, because I have no idea. I want to say Cardiff, but I also want to say Derby, and I want to say Stoke, and I want to say everybody, because anybody could go down. Like, it's a really...
Ollie, I want to say everyone, and I also want to say no one.
Maybe what we should do is just say that for this season, nobody's going down. We're going to keep 2 can go down. We'll keep everybody else. The top 2 can come up from League One, and we'll draw it there. Don't worry about the playoffs. It's fine.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, so if we look at Derby's remaining, because Derby have got the form, because they won those 4 on the spin. They've taken 2 points from their last 3, which isn't as good. But in terms of overall form, you'd say they're trending upwards.
When you look at the games as well, to be fair to them, in the 2 points from their last 3, but one of them was against Burnley and the other one's away at Portsmouth. Yes,
exactly. So those are good results for Derby. So they've got Luton at home. Now, the interesting thing about that game on Good Friday is that Luton are in the position of a win for Derby is a nice to have, whereas a win for Luton is a must have.
Yeah, they've not got like Derby. It's not ideal, but a point isn't a disaster for Derby,
especially if Cardiff lose at Bramall Lane.
Exactly. Whereas for Luton, a point's relegated you. Like, you've got to go and win that game of football. Yeah. And so you do question whether or not that plays into it. Will Luton turn up at just another level? We know that Luton have got something in them. They've not shown it at all season for 42 games. But there's got to be a level in this Luton squad of those players who were in the Premier League last season saying, actually, come on, this is embarrassing. We've got to be able to do better than this. I think that's probably game of the day on Friday. I think that's the most exciting game that's taking place on Good Friday this year, because, I can see so many different scenarios happening.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that Luton's Defensively, Luton have actually been pretty strong. They've been actually one of the basically top half form defensively since Matt Bloomfield took charge, because they've got Christ Makosa at the back. They've re-solidified a little bit. Mark McGuinness is playing quite well at the moment. So they've got this good defensive base, but they still have this confidence issue in the final third.
You know, their games, I'm looking back at their games in the last 6. It's 1-2-1, draw 0-0, 1-1-0, drawn 1-1, drawn 1-1, lost 1-0. They are games that are played on the margins. They're played on one goal either way. They're trying to keep it to 0s and 1s, making the game really simple. Keep it to 0 and then try and get a winner. And so that could suit them really well. Like you say, defensively, we know that they're relatively solid. Can they find the goal? Obviously, Derby are resurgent at the minute. They're in a really good moment. They're really kicking on. John Eustace doing a fantastic job yet again at another club. So I had no idea how to call it.
Yeah. And then Hull, I mean, 1 win in 5 for Hull, so that it's not like they're peeling away. Even Portsmouth, they beat Leeds in mid-March, and you thought that's them sailing away. And then since then, they've only won once. So again, Portsmouth are sort of just could be got at. And this is the mad thing, because as much as we're very close to saying Luton, that defeat to Blackburn feels significant, and that they could be on their way down, I'm also mindful that even up to Portsmouth in 19th, a victory would take Luton within 3 points of Portsmouth. And okay, they've got an inferior goal difference, which is almost like an extra point, but it does show how quickly things can still change. And you have the perfect Easter weekend, and the situation can turn on its head.
Yeah, it can completely switch, and you can flip these things so fast in that, like you say, within 4 days, everything can change. It did. Yeah. We saw it at the top of the table last weekend, where you went from United can go 4 points clear when they kick off against Oxford to all of a sudden United are 2 points behind everybody and scrapping to stay in the automatic promotion race after the Tuesday night game. Like, that's how quickly it can change. And that can happen for these teams down at the bottom, but they need a perfect week. Everything's got to go their way. I think for Portsmouth, that 91st minute equaliser against Derby is crucial. That for me that's the big moment that really they'll look back on at the end of the season and go, oh, it's a good job we got that. Because that's the one that makes me think that they're just enough. They're just far enough away with the additional goal difference. Just by the skin of their teeth, they're probably going to be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so I'm so looking for. So in terms of the relegation dogfight, the big fixture start, the 12:30 game between Derby and Luton, which absolutely
anybody who likes football, watch that game because it's going to be awesome. That is the game of the day. I have no question about it.
Yeah, I feel like this is the Mitchell and Webb sketch where we're talking about this. Every game's massive.
Massive game.
So I mean, again, Middlesbrough against Plymouth Argyle. Again, Argyle, it's all about wins for them now. Draws aren't good enough. I think if you're on 40 points, you've got to get the victories. Draws are really no good to you. Preston North End QPR, I think that I could very easily see that being a draw, just to kind of nudge both teams towards safety, because I think a draw would suit both teams. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if that one was 0-0. Stoke against Sheffield Wednesday, I think, is the golden opportunity for Stoke to get to 50 points.
I think that gets Stoke over the line. I've been relatively consistent since about December that I thought Stoke were the team who were going to drop. I thought they were going to take that third relegation spot, but I think they'll make themselves safe this weekend if they can get that win against Wednesday.
Yeah, I think for me it's that relationship between Bocat and Beijing Ho on the left-hand side for Stoke City. They look pretty strong, don't they? And then of course Cardiff at Sheffield United and Oxford against Leeds. Do you think it's likelier that Oxford pull off a surprise at home to Leeds than Cardiff win at Sheffield United? No.
No, I think it's much more likely that Cardiff win at Bramall Lane than Oxford win against Leeds. I think for me, it's going to be a big question mark on United's mentality for that game and the way that we come out and attack it. We're talking about a team now that lost to Oxford, lost to Plymouth. We can no longer look at it as a slam dunk as we're going to bounce back from this. You know, our performance levels have been really low. I think the way that we talked earlier about potentially mentality problems, whether it's something else that's happening in the squad at the moment, I think there's a big question mark. And so Cardiff will probably see this as an opportunity that they didn't see coming. You know, a month ago, I would have told you no chance. Cardiff will not win at Bramall Lane. There's just no way they come and do that. Whereas now, there's a huge chance that they could come, and if not win, get a positive result at Bramall Lane, because we are wobbling and we do seem to just be completely on the edge. And I think if Cardiff come into that game, having seen everybody else's results, let's say Hull have already lost, Derby have already lost, they might come into it with the momentum, with the positive vibes, and enough to win the game.
Yeah, it's possible. I still like to have a little bit of faith in Chris Wilder to sort of re-steady the lads, have a meeting, clear the air a little bit, and yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's more likely United win than that Cardiff do. I would say that United are the likely winners of the game, but if the question is who's more likely to win, Cardiff or Oxford, I think Cardiff have got, say, a 30% chance of winning at Bramall Lane. I think Oxford have probably got a 5% chance of beating Leeds.
Yeah. And then Coventry against West Brom in the just to kind of switch ends the table. I mean, that's a huge one as well, because what I hadn't quite recognised earlier is that they're either side of the line. So if West Brom win at Coventry, they're back in the driving seat in terms of the playoffs, because they've got a superior goal difference as well to Middlesbrough and Millwall. So that's a huge one going into to Easter Monday as well. If West Brom could win at Coventry, that would again set the cat among the pigeons.
Yeah, completely. And it really opens it all back up. You know, we talked about the disappointment and the frustration that West Brom might be feeling. You can get rid of all of that in one afternoon. One result changes the entire narrative. You're back in the driving seat. It's interesting. It's one of those situations where it's almost everybo's got it in their own hands.
Yeah.
You win your games that are in front of you, you will get that sixth spot.
Do you know what, Ollie? I actually, psychologically, I in some ways prefer to go into a game knowing we've got to win, because I think when you go
I'll
into
bear that in mind on Easter Monday.
But you
know
what?
Going to Turf Moor where Burnley never lose, but it's all right. We've got to win. So
But you know what? I think sometimes when you go into games with this feeling that you're facing an opponent who's after the same thing, and you're slightly above them, and you know that a draw would just keep things on an even keel. It's like the playoff second leg, for instance, when you've already got an advantage, and it's like you know that a draw would be a great result, but you don't want to think like a draw would be a great result, because that can be quite a bad thing psychologically. Yeah. So sometimes it simplifies things in a way when you know what you've got to do, and we've got to win this. Yeah,
no choice, no doubt in the back of your mind. Go out, win this game of football, because if you do anything else, you've blown your chance. And it does make a huge difference psychologically. You know, think back to some of those amazing moments, like Liverpool against Barcelona, for example, that amazing comeback, when actually Barcelona were probably sat there thinking, we can lose 2-0, it don't matter. And so when they're 2-0 down, they don't panic or scare. They go, yeah, that's fine, this is part of the plan. And that just feeds into everything. It's so hard to get yourself going once you've started a game with that mentality. And yeah, that's a real risk for Coventry, especially with the form they're in. There's every chance that they could turn up and the games have gone. It's sort of away from you before you've even realised. So yeah, it's exciting. I love this time of season. If United just hadn't been rubbish, I would be having a lovely time.
Absolutely. Ollie, I think that just about wraps it up. It's been lovely to chat to you. I've not got any clearer to any closer to an answer on what's likely to happen in the Championship, but I've enjoyed the chat nonetheless.
It's been great. I always love talking it through, and it's always nice to have a conversation. If you want me to stick my neck out, I'll stick my neck out for you. I think Leeds and Burnley get top 2.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Sunderland win the playoffs.
Oof.
I think the two teams who get in it with them are Bristol City and Coventry. I think that'll stay the same. I think there'll be potential swings and roundabouts, but I think it'll be Bristol City and Coventry when the music stops playing. I think relegation, Plymouth, Luton, Hull.
Oh, I've just been burnt by the hot take there.
Yeah, you see. I've changed my mind on who gets relegated so often. I've changed my mind all the time. Last time, I remember we talked to one of the guys from Hull and back, Nathaniel, I think it was, a few
Yes.
weeks ago. We did a relegation thing. And I was like, no, Hull are fine. Don't worry about it. Nathaniel, I'm on your side. Hull, great side. They're going to have no problems at all. Turned it round with Sellers. Great manager. Don't worry about it. Today, nah, they're gone, mate. League One.
Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, Ollie, keep up the great work on the Sheffield United Way podcast and channel as well. So go get subscribed to that. And we'll see you again next week for another Championship podcast. And next time we speak, Burnley could be promoted with with Leeds to the Premier League. Sorry, Ollie.